I want to talk today about how you think, how you think, and how you speak to yourself. The way you think about yourself and the way you see yourself in your mind's eye dictates who you become, the actions you take. It dictates your reality. So if you think of yourself as an unaccomplished, shy, weak, unsuccessful person, then you're going to be that. Even if it's not true, you're going to be that because your mind says it's so. So I want to start with first this chapter from Maxwell Maltz's workbook about psycho-cybernetics. So this is from his workbook called Zero Resistance Living: How to Use the Famous Creative Psycho-Cybernetics Mental Training and Personal Empowerment Techniques to Achieve Your Life Aspirations Easier, Faster, and More Enjoyably. Psycho-cybernetics is something that I studied in 2017, and it was what I used to get myself out of a really dark place, and it was kind of the first thing I used to start changing how I thought, because how I was thinking was leading me to a place I didn't want to be. Honestly, my life was not how I wanted it to be. My internal world was not how I wanted it to be. Even though I was a successful CrossFit coach and I was a competitive athlete and making a lot of progress in my fitness and my strength and all kinds of things in fitness in 2017, mentally and emotionally, I was not doing so well. And I hid a lot of the suffering that I was going through because I didn't have very good coping mechanisms, and I was ashamed of that, and I was embarrassed, and I also felt like there was there was some unalignment between the coach that I was and how I presented myself and what was happening in my mind and behind closed doors. So let's just say I was nearly, suicidal, having a really hard time just coping with life, but I presented myself differently. I think a lot of people that I was close to saw that I struggled, and I was open with them about that. But in general, I just didn't know how to get myself out of this rut I was in of thinking about the past, being really afraid of the future, feeling very disempowered. I was very emotional, and I hated myself. I was self-deprecating and very hard on myself. I'd feel depressed a lot when I was alone. The only time I felt like I was really okay, just because I was distracted, was when I was coaching classes. And when I wasn't coaching classes, it's like everything just came strong to me about how I was not feeling well or doing well. And I feel like I was just in a really dark and tragic place in my life. So I wanted to get myself out of this position. I had entered into a fairly new relationship at that time. It really started in 2016, but in 2017 and 2016, I really realized that I was not a healthy person, and I wanted my relationship to succeed with this new partner I had, and I wanted myself to succeed. I wanted to be a healthier person. So I looked into psycho-cybernetics when I found out about it, and I was told about it, and it seemed like something I could probably benefit from. It's about, training your mind and training your thoughts to work in a way that are beneficial to you and will help you succeed in the things that you want to succeed in and leave behind the things that are damaging to you. So it's kind of a form of cognitive behavioral therapy. That's where you are basically aware of your mind, and you're aware of your mind's patterns, and you work to reprogram your mind. And we know that our mind is malleable, or it can be changed. The wiring in our brain is something that is not permanent. We can change the wiring in our brain by focusing on it and training it to fire in a different pattern. So I identified with this in myself. I saw I have a pattern of suicidal thinking. I have a pattern of worst case scenario thinking. I have a pattern of being tuned into tragedy and feeling like it's just a matter of time before the next tragic thing happens. I have a pattern of feeling helpless and victimized. And if that's a pattern that is basically the brain is used to functioning that way, then it means that I can train my brain to be different. But it was really hard. So I just want to read this. It's like, a good paragraph from this book, and then I want to talk more about the way that you think and talk to yourself, and how that can change over time, and how if you change it, you can have a different life and a different reality, and that life and reality can be what you want. It can be what you want to create for yourself. You don't have to be a victim, and you don't have to be helpless. So, within every human being are the success mechanism and the failure mechanism. And you have the choice of using either one in your daily living. You have the choice of using either one in your daily living. I'm going to try to read like a normal person. Your forebrain behind the forehead is your goal-striving center, the seat of achievement. When you want to reach a goal, you call upon the tape recorder in your midbrain, your electronic computer, the size of a hazelnut, the sum total of all your experience, good and bad. This is called your servo mechanism, which works subconsciously, automatically. If you call upon your past successes, you will succeed in the present, provided your goals are realistic and within your capabilities and training. If, on the other hand, you call upon your past failures, you will fail even before you start, simply because you can't think positively with negative feelings any more than you can think negatively with positive feelings. The business of living creatively and reaching self-fulfillment, in essence, means learning to use the success mechanism. And equally important, substituting the success mechanism for the failure mechanism when you're overcome with a mistake that steers you away from successful living. The success or failure mechanism will work for you. It depends on which mechanism you want to use. You may have an electronic computer within your midbrain, but you control it, which means you control your own destiny. For example, okay, pay attention. This is where I feel like you got to see the visual of this for it to make sense. For example, here is my pen. I put it on the table. Now I want to pick up the pen. That's my goal, and I achieve it without effort. But when I was an infant, I didn't know how to pick up the pen successfully. I zigged and I zagged in the direction of the pen to get the pen. But I still tried, corrected my course, and finally picked up the pen. Information went to my brain to tell me that I was going in the wrong direction, doing the zigs, and I immediately changed my direction in the form of a zag. Course correction, right? To get to the goal. This process, the brain giving information to the arm, doing its action, is called negative feedback. It is the process of supplying directive data to a mechanism while the action is taking place. After many months of zigzagging, I learned how to pick up the pen successfully. And ever since then, I pick up the pen without effort, without knowing the muscles involved in the process. In other words, I forgot the zigging and the zagging and remembered only the successful performance that I stored in my electronic computer, my servo mechanism, which I use whenever I need to. You can use your subconscious servo mechanism to succeed or to fail. It will work either way for you. The choice is yours. All right, so I wanted to start with that because the servo mechanism is, I think, just a key concept. It's a way to understand that what you think is true or possible will become true. What you put your focus on or your emphasis on is going to paint your reality. So if you are constantly thinking and remembering or talking to yourself about your failures or the negative aspects of your life, then that's what's going to be your reality, because that's what the servo mechanism is focused on making true for you. So in my class, I do a program with one-on-one clients. I do a one-on-one program called Solid Self-Image. And we talk about how the way that you think of yourself in your mind's eye is basically the direction you're giving your subconscious. You're saying, if you think of yourself as a small, unimportant person, then you're going to behave in a way that a small and unimportant person will behave, because your mind, your subconscious mind, can't hold two truths at once. Like Maxwell Maltz was saying, it can't hold a negative and a positive at the same time. It's like the same with your nervous system. You can't be in parasympathetic mode and sympathetic mode. You can't be in rest or digest and in fight or flight at the same time. You can only be in one at the same time. It's the same thing with the servo mechanism. If you say, I'm a piece of shit and I suck, then you will behave in a way that makes that true. It makes that statement true. That's what your servo mechanism is meant to do. It's like a missile. Whatever target you have, whether it's negative or positive, it will do that for you. It's a very good servant. It will make it so for you. But if I think I'm a capable person who always finds a way to get to the other side, or I'm someone who is lovable and I'm empowered every day, your servo mechanism hears that truth and can only make that happen, because you have to align your statements, and the way you think of yourself has to align to something. You can't hold two truths. That's why it's so important to think about the way that you talk about yourself to yourself and to other people. If someone compliments you, take the compliment. Say thank you and take it, instead of beating yourself up immediately after you hear the compliment. Oh, you look great. Oh, thanks. I think I put on like 10 pounds, so this was the only thing I could find. What are you doing? Take the compliment and let your identity be in line with the positive feedback you just got from the other person. But better yet, do that for yourself. That was just the first example that came to mind. Do it for yourself. How you think about yourself, the way you see yourself in your mind's eye. If you see yourself as a successful person who stands up tall and has their chest up and feels like they are worthy and lovable and ready to get shit done, you are definitely going to be that way, because that's how you see yourself, and that's how you should talk to yourself. So instead of, this used to be my kind of language. I'm just going to give you a sample of how bad it used to be. Hopefully I won't embody it too much, but I used to say things like, you're such a piece of shit. You can't even do that right. What makes you think you can do this thing right? What makes you think you can do blah, 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 blah? If you can't even do this, you're so pathetic. And that's how I would talk. And then I would cry and beat myself up, and it would just be get worse and worse and worse. That was my identity. That became my identity because that was the language I was used to using on myself. It's how I saw myself. And it was such a terrible place to be in. I felt like I was tearing myself down all the time. But people talk like that to themselves and they don't even realize it. Like, I didn't realize it until it got really bad and I was at the point of something needs to change, right? So tune into your thoughts. Think about how you speak to yourself. Think about the example I just gave you of how bad I used to talk to myself. You're such a piece of shit. You can't even do this. What makes you think you can do that? If you can't do this simple thing, you're pathetic. I mean, that was like an everyday like tear down. I would just tear myself apart and I would scream that to myself. If I was alone in my car, I would do it. I would say it in my head. I would feel it. It didn't even have to have words eventually. It was so strong I could just feel it, the self-loathing. Imagine that versus someone like this. Oh shoot, I messed that up. Well, that's okay. I learned my lesson from that one. I'm definitely gonna do it differently next time. I'm glad that I made that mistake because now I know not to do it again. Okay, all cool. You were doing your best. I know you were. So let's just carry on and keep going. What a nice way of talking to yourself. That's how I talk to myself now. But I'm trying to tell you, I didn't always have that healthy way of communicating and being. So one of the things that I did was I really did focus on my on the inner dialogue. I saw that I was very, very cruel to myself and I was not a good friend to myself. I was a great friend to other people. They could tell me anything. I would pump them up. I would listen to them. I was there for them. But why not myself? And it had to make me very sad before I was willing to change it, before I realized there's a problem here and I don't want to live this way anymore. So you have to not only be aware, but you have to realize that you're worth much, much more than that. You are worth the effort of changing that dialogue, and no one deserves to talk to you that way. No one should be allowed to talk to you that way. You don't deserve it. But sometimes we're the hardest on ourselves, right? So that needs to be something you want to change. Once you realize this is happening, I have very unkind language, or I just don't think of myself or feel good about myself, and I want to change that. So first you have to want to change it. So the way you see yourself in your mind's eye and the way you speak to yourself is going to dictate how your identity shapes and what your reality is. If you use positive language and if you see yourself in a positive way in your mind, that's going to dictate your reality and it's going to be much more positive. There is a time when I couldn't think of happy thoughts. So I would go to bed and I realized that the last thoughts I had before I went to bed or as I laid there trying to go to sleep, they were like tragic memories or playing out worst case scenarios in my head. And it's like my brain was just conditioned to play the negative reel. The negative reel was all I was used to. And I thought, this is crazy. Like, I can only think of past tragic events and I can only imagine negative things, and I could only see myself in a negative way. So one night I tried to change that, and I remember this very clearly. I was laying in bed, so I wasn't sitting, I was laying there, and I tried to have a good memory. Like, I tried to create a good memory. I tried to imagine a good scenario, the way I wanted things to be. And it was like a mental block. I could not do it. I kept thinking of the negative, the negative, the negative, the negative possibilities, things that hadn't even happened yet, but I was picturing them in my mind very clearly. And then I was remembering the tragic parts of my life. And I was traumatized from a lot of the recent events in my life that were really starting to get a hold of me. I was in this dark place because my life had taken a quick turn and I was in a hard place, let's just say, right? We all go through those times where we feel really shaken and we don't know if we can make it, if we're going to be able to pull through. So that's where I was in those days. And I wanted to be able to picture a happy ending for myself. I wanted to see that I could get through this, but I couldn't even imagine it. So it took practice. I didn't give up. I just tried every night to think about the way things could be. And so you need to condition your brain. If you're someone who's like how I was, where I couldn't even picture the good stuff, and I couldn't even remember the good times, and I couldn't bring back the feelings of being alive and being loving and being loved and being happy and smiling and laughing, if I couldn't remember all of those things and create memories with those things, then if you're like that, we just need to train it. It's just a conditioned pattern. Just know that your brain is wired to do something right now, but it's not permanent. You can wire it in a new way. It just takes practice. So if that means a couple minutes a night before you go to sleep, you work on thinking positive ways. You practice dreaming. You practice, when I say dreaming, you practice envisioning a life for yourself that is beautiful, and that's how you want life to be. And you want to be in a certain house, and you want to look a certain way, and you want to move a certain way, you want to feel a certain way in your body, and you want to have confidence, and you want to feel alive and in love with yourself and in love with life and in love with the people around you. You need to practice painting that picture. And the more you practice it, the better it will get, because your brain will start to rewire. So it takes practice. Don't give up if you are someone who struggles like I did. Just don't give up. Put the training in before you go to bed. And you know what another really good time is to do this is first thing in the morning. Wake up and say a mantra that is positive. Because I don't know if you watched my last video, which was about happiness versus suffering, but in that video we talked about, was that the same? Yeah. Or was it? Actually, I might have said that in the video that's about creating your morning routines. In one of those videos, I mentioned how when we're asleep, we're in the least non-resistant place that we could possibly be. Not only physically, but subconsciously and consciously, our brain is not trying to do anything while we're asleep. The subconscious is taking over. So when you wake up, you're in a really, vulnerable state. You can program your brain at that time when you first wake up to rewire and to accept messages much easier than when a whole day has passed and your conscious mind is really active and you've been thinking in certain patterns all day. So my point is, you're really in a prime position in the morning. Your brain and your subconscious mind is like in a clean slate. So that's a great time to practice a mantra. And mantras are just things that you say to yourself that are empowering and allow your success mechanism to grab a hold of that and say, yes, okay, I'll do that. So like in the mornings right now, I'm waking up, looking in the mirror, and I have a little list of mantras that I don't have memorized because I just wrote these new ones. But they're things like, the universe has my back. No matter what happens, I know that everything is unfolding as it should, and I'm benefiting in the end. Today, I'm my happy and most loving self. The old mantra that probably a lot of people know is, day by day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. So a mantra is just a statement. It's language that you use that helps you orient to the way that you want to live and feel and be and the life you want to create. That's what a mantra is. It's just, I want to create this for me. I want to live this reality. I want to feel these ways. And so I'm going to say it as if it's true, as if it's in the present moment. And by me saying it, I'm directing my servo mechanism to say, yes, that's the goal, that's the target. I will pick that up. I will do that. Okay, so those are two ways to train for more positive thoughts. Think about it before you go to bed. Really just put some time into it. If you're like me, the way I struggled with it, it made me go to sleep. I had such a it was such a mental exercise that it was exhausting to think of the positive. But keep doing it, even if it's 1 minute of trying to think of the positive, just keep doing it. It'll help you rewire your brain. This is called neuroplasticity, right? So neuroplasticity is just about rewiring your brain. It's the science of how our neurons can be rewired to fire in different patterns. Just because you've thought this way all your life does not mean that you're stuck thinking that way. That's what neuroplasticity is, and it's so awesome to know that our human brains are that plastic. We can mold them, we can change them, we can train ourselves to be the way we want to be and live the way we want to live just by changing our thoughts. So one way, like I said, think about it at night before you go to bed. Envision the life that you want. Be the person that you truly want to be in your mind's eye. Practice it at that time. And then when you wake up, say some mantras. Say things that are oriented to the way you want to feel, the way you want to be, and the life you want to have, the life you want to create. So these statements are going to be in one sentence, just simple, and in the present tense. Simple, positive, present tense. That's what a mantra is. And some people think it's woo-woo, and just trust me, it's not, okay? This is all related to science, neuroplasticity. Just look it up, and this is what it's about. That's what cognitive behavioral psychology is. The last thing is, if you do notice that you have this critical voice that's really damaging you, and we don't need it. We just don't need to have that critical voice if it's tearing us down. If it's negative, if you're talking to yourself the way you would, if you are talking to yourself in a way that you would never talk to a small child, then I say this video is for you, right? So many times we don't realize that we are really unkind to ourselves, and that needs to stop because we're trying to create a life we want to live. So we definitely need to be thinking the way someone who has that life would think, feeling the way someone has that life would feel. We need to train ourselves to be that person. So if you notice there's this critical voice, and let's call it the inner critic, but some people say it's the inner judge, some people say it's the parental voice or the coach within, whatever it is, that critical voice, you need to realize how much it operates in you, and if you need to tune it down, name it. So I'm just going to tell you what I'm talking about in a little more simple terms. I'm being simple, but I feel like I'm being vague. If you have a critical voice that's tearing you down, name the voice, because what that does is it helps you disassociate from the voice, meaning that voice is not me. That voice is a pattern that I've learned. It's an ego construct that keeps me small, but it's not me. So I'm going to name it. And now that's separate from me. So when that voice comes up again, I can say, oh, no, whatever your name is, not today. I'm not going to listen to you. I don't give a shit about what you say, so-and-so. So now you're separate from it. And that was a huge breaking point for me in this process of training my brain to be more success, positive, and loving oriented towards myself, right? So I named I'll just tell you my inner critic's name is Dane Wilkinson. And I just developed this character in my head. Dane Wilkinson was this greasy, slimy, really sickly looking man. But he was like skin and bones and kind of like a ragged, I just tried to make him very unlikable. Someone that I thought, I put him together and it made me cringe. And that's how grossed out I was. So when I heard that voice, oh, you're such a piece of shit. Do you really think blah, 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 blah? I would think that's Dane. Get out of here, Dane. You are not allowed. I'm not even going to listen to that. Some people have another way of doing it where they're loving to the critical voice and they say, thank you. Thank you for looking out for me. I know you're trying to protect me. I know it's out of fear what you're doing and you're trying to keep me safe. you're trying to help me stay clear of danger, or you're trying to help me not make any mistakes, and I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I don't need your help. I've got this. Thanks anyways. Goodbye. So you can decide how you want to talk to your inner critic. But the point is to identify when the inner critic comes up and to disassociate from it. It's not you, it's something else. And so you talk to it like it's a different person. It's a different part of you. And that's a part of you you want to make smaller and smaller and smaller until it is no longer the dominant voice in your head. And then it's not even a voice in your head. It's out of the picture. It's out of your life. It's like you just asked someone to move out of your house. And you're like, sorry, I know you've been here a long time, but I don't want you here anymore. You're not allowed to live here, and you evict them. But it takes practice, right? So bottom line is be aware of the way you speak to yourself. Be aware of the image you have of yourself in your mind's eye. And listen to also how you talk about yourself to other people. I think a great way to kind of tune into how you talk about yourself or how you see yourself when another person is around is, how do you respond when someone gives you a compliment? Can you take the compliment, or do you squirm and make an excuse, or not an excuse, but you minimize or you diminish the compliment? That's a good indicator that the inner critic is having its way with you, and it's probably worse when you're alone. So that's just something to look out for. And the bottom line is, we all deserve to have amazing, beautiful things in our life, because it's 5:03. You're amazing and beautiful. Just by being alive, by being you. And that also makes me think of Mr. Rogers. I don't know if you're a fan of Mr. Rogers, but I'm sure a fan of him. And I also started watching his videos again around this time. I needed some of those reminders. So hopefully this gives you some reminders about how kind to be to yourself and how to create the life that you want to live and feel the way you want to feel and be who you want to be. These are some just training tips on how to do that and rewire that brain. I'll talk more on that later because I could go on and on, but I'll see you next time. Bye.